Um,
I'm ready. Wherever you are.
all right, welcome everybody. You are at Kelvin Trek, boldly going in the right direction or lost in space. It might actually be a bad idea to vote at the beginning because I'm afraid of where that might go. But this panel does have a secret subtext that you may not know about because part of it was thought up to talk a little bit about maybe learning how to have polite discourse about something that you're a little emotional about. And, you know, I've just come from a panel where Jar Jar has come up multiple times and people have a lot of feelings, big feelings. So there's a couple of possibilities. One is that there's a significant divide in the Trek community. And the other is that Nick has clearly misunderstood the situation. And I'm in a very smaller group. So we're going to talk about both of those things.
Are you saying you're emotionally compromised?
Highly. What's that from? Is that from Star Wars or something? What's that?
No.
Okay. So we'll get into it. My name is Nick Frutiger. I'm by trade a behavior specialist, but I'm an aspiring multiple panelist, and my specialties seem to include Star Wars, Star Trek, Disney, and a couple of other things. And I do panels apparently now at Conjuration, Dragon Con, and Anthony and I have done panels at every Stellar Fest.
My name is Anthony Liggins, and I'm a co-host of the Fandom Hybrid podcast. We are 3 subscribers away from 500, so go to YouTube, look for the Fandom Hybrid podcast, and subscribe. It doesn't cost a thing. It's free. So help us get to 500. I've been doing conventions as a panelist for a few years, but I've been on the Dragon Con for like 24 years. I think Gary Mitchell convinced me to do panels. Hanako also got me into doing panels. We started a podcast during the pandemic because we were all stuck in the house and wanted to talk about stuff. So Hanako and I were on the previous podcast called the Sci-Fi Party Line. That's kind of where we caught the buzz for it. I've been a director or assistant director of media at Monsterama Con, which is a retro fantasy convention held here in Atlanta. And this is my first Stellar Fest, you know? So, yeah.
We're glad to have you.
Yeah. Just some transparency. Chris, who started this thing, has trivia night used to have trivia night at Best in Brewery. And we were walking out, and I don't know how the subject came up, but Star Trek came up. And my wife goes, yeah, I really like, my wife, Michelle, she says, I really like Star Trek. And Nick stops. And he has a visceral, physical reaction. What? And then he looks to me for guidance. I'm like, well, I actually kind of like him too, because I'm a Trekkie. So that's where the genesis of this comes from.
And what followed was a very respectful conversation. From my perspective, it was nice and mellow and chill. And what I've heard from others is that my eyes went black and I levitated.
He is emotionally compromised.
So. That's good. They should Star Trek movie. That's good stuff. So yeah, did that.
Oh, this is gonna be fun. Be respectful of each other's opinions. Everyone has one, so.
Here. I'm afraid you are most likely right, but we're gonna try. We're gonna do our best. And I only started losing my voice yesterday, and I may have been smoked, but I'm not sure. Like God may have leaned down and said no. So we'll see. Okay, what is Kelvin Trek? And show of hands, who is already completely familiar with what Kelvin Trek is? All right, great. You give me something to do. So in the early 2000s, they had finished the last of a series of shows, and that was Star Trek Enterprise. And it seemed like viewership had declined significantly. So in 2009, they released a new movie with a new, young, fresh cast, and that was just called Star Trek. And Chris Pine is the new Captain Kirk, and Zachary Quinto from Heroes, who was like huge at the time because Heroes was still pretty electric on everyone's mind, was the new Spock. And it was a new movie that I don't know. I didn't participate in message boards as much as Anthony, so I guess I sort of assumed that most Trekkies would feel like me, but I went and saw it, and I try to be a very positive person, and it was very pretty, and the sounds and stuff. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That was 2009, and what followed are two more movies. Not really designed to be a trilogy per se, but they just wanted to see how far it would go, and this is overview. So we've got Into Darkness in 2013 and Beyond in 2016. Yeah. So kind of setting up what happened. For those of you not as familiar with Kelvin Trek, we call it that because it gets kicked off really by the incident at the beginning of the first movie where the starship Kelvin is
obliterated.
Yeah, there's an incident, and the incident creates alternate set of events or timeline. And what happened after that, to those viewing in 2009, it just felt like there were like, oh, hey, anything could go now because you've adjusted the timeline early on. We find out in a twist, spoiler alert for the beginning of the first of these movies, that on board the ship as the disaster is happening, a baby Captain Kirk is being born, which is to say, oh, you know, this is going to change all of the events. And it does. He looks different. But this is what happened after that is two more movies. And on that timeline, and then what we did not know in 2009 or through 2013 is that we would have future products in the previous timeline. So now I have a slide I'll put up later, but there is actually, you can buy a DVD Blu-ray set that says Kelvin Timeline on it. And it's interesting. So they've realized that for marketing as well. Raise your hand if you are pretty familiar with the Kelvin Timeline in any way. Keep your hand up if you're a fan. Okay, thank you. Raise your hand if you're somewhere between meh and not so much on the Kelvin Timeline. Okay, thank you. Not going to make a value statement or anything.
You didn't ask if there's anyone who just doesn't like it.
I wasn't trying to be. Okay, well, I'm a very positive person. I judge almost everything on a significant curve. So just to dip my toe in the water, I think that the actors are really great people, and it's a very pretty movie. And there are some really cool looking bits. And I told Anthony in preparation, I actually have like some things that are, here's a positive and here's a positive. But yes, overall frustrating for Nick. But if you are frustrated, I'm going to talk about that a little bit in a mostly respectful way. Oh, and if you don't know, if you can't make it out, here is the Kelvin in the middle. And it's hard to see because this is also about the time that Transformers movies started coming out. So special effects people just showed you the inside of blenders all the time. You didn't see, there's all this stuff, and things are less smooth. So this giant blob is an enemy ship that's Romulan, but it's really a story I'll get into. And down here at the bottom left is a guy who turned out to be, in a surprise twist, Kirk's dad at the beginning of the movie, played by Thor. So yeah. Very young Thor.
Very young Thor.
And I mean, he does a good job. He rocks it. Yeah. Yeah. No technical errors.
He was captain of a starship in 2 minutes and saved 200 lives.
Yeah. I dare you to do better.
I dare you to do better.
So here's a glance at the timeline. The nice, pretty yellow one that you can see is the one that most of us are fairly familiar with. And you can see they've put Enterprise way back at the left. And right around here is TOS, the original series, the animated series. All the movies for the original crew, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager. Then they made Enterprise back here. And now they've added to this timeline some of the newer stuff. We have crew movies for the Next Generation crew, but also I think this is Lower Decks. It looks like Lost, but I think it's
I think
Lower
it's Lower
Decks.
Decks.
And Star Trek Picard
Yeah, LDS.
over here. Yes. Um and here is this serial thing, meteor that's a planet blowing up or a supernova in the Romulan system. And what that does is it creates this timeline where the ship, the Narada, is thrown back in time to about here, creating this alternate timeline. Or if you're in the theater in 2009, about here, erasing this entire timeline. But you know, we weren't sure about what was going to happen.
Wait. What did you say? It didn't erase it.
We didn't know. You're right, it didn't.
Yeah.
At the time,
if read the novelization.
we have a time travel panel coming up tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow at
10
10 a.m. Please.
When everybody's really rearing to
please.
go Sunday morning, you're like,
Please.
time. But
no, it doesn't erase. But if you read the novelization, Prime Spock makes it clear it's an alternate timeline. It's not a new timeline.
Okay, I'm not one of the people on the internet that says if you have to research it to make sense.
No, you don't.
I don't do that. And I will say that that next slide there is a comic series, and I've started reading comic books since I got frustrated about this movie. And there's a 4-comic mini thing that explains a bunch of things, including why all the people on the planet didn't evacuate before Romulus gets destroyed. Spoiler alert, it's the premise, it's the beginning. And some other things that have to do with the plot.
Yeah. One of the best things about that is it shows you that Geordie LaForge actually had a hand in building the ship.
I'm sorry, Mirror universe. Good question.
It's not considered a separate timeline. It's more of an alternate reality. But that's a discussion for another panel, another time.
Yeah, no, good question.
It's a mirror universe.
Yeah. And one thing about Star Trek is fans really are good at making graphics. So if you have a question, there's some good stuff.
Yeah.
And there are some things here that might come up later, but there are, like Anthony mentioned with the novelization, there are things that if you just watch the movie, Hanako just watched one of the movies, and I asked her to kind of check in for me if by the end she felt like she understood something that I don't think they didn't explain, but I think they kind of really fast, like jumped over it. So we'll go into that some. You wanna cut?
Oh, the case for Kelvin Trek. Oh, wait a second.
You have
all my points on your thing. Oh, I have my notes over here. All right, so the reason why Kelvin Trek, I can kind of do this off my head. It's a fresh take on iconic characters. What it allowed to do is it gave them the opportunity to kind of not redo the characters, but give us a different perspective and give them a little bit more depth. Because, I mean, as much as I love the original series and that, a lot of the characters were kind of one-dimensional, maybe two-dimensional, but this sort of gave them a little bit more, I don't want to use the word life, but it sort of did. Like Kirk's issue with his legacy and dealing with his father, that kind of gave him a little bit more depth or trying to live up to his father's legacy. Spock and his journey into his identity is something that we get into in the movies later, way later, but here you get to start off with that, him and his issues with his identity. We also get more accessibility because you kind of get a start with something people kind of know about Trek, but like my wife, for example, the person who I live with, I'm related to by marriage, she never was a real big Star Trek fan, except for some reason she liked the whales. I don't know why. But she does. She always talks about there's a lot of stuff and a lot of history and a lot of information about these characters. Well, when she watched this first Star Trek, 2008 or 9, she was like, oh my God, that was amazing. That's like one of her favorite movies. She watches it once every 2 or 3 months because she loves it. But she doesn't have all that baggage that I do. So I'll watch it.
I'm trying not to mug. I'm sorry.
I watch it. I enjoy it. Not as much as she does, but I do enjoy it. And it is a different take on this. this is not related, but if you are watching The Wheel of Time, they kind of do that because Robert Jordan didn't make a lot of his characters multidimensional. They're all one-dimensional. But on the show, you can see that they're making an effort to giving characters more depth. And I kind of like that J.J. Abrams did that because Nick is inevitably going to say that J.J. Abrams hates Star Trek. What he actually does, he said he didn't connect with it and he thought it was boring. He wanted to be more adventurous. And so, well, he tried to make it more adventurous and add some depth to some of the characters. But you know, that's debatable if he did that. So yeah, it's a new timeline that gave them creative freedom. I thought the cast chemistry was great, just to be honest. I mean, great. I don't know if I was a huge fan at first of Uhura and Spock's relationship, but it kind of grew on me. Yeah, but there's some original series episodes where I don't want to say they implied a relationship, but they kind of teased it in the direction. I think the one where he was playing music and she was dancing.
Episode Charlie X, I think maybe two
Yeah,
or three.
yeah. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility. You just kind of expounded on that. So the timeline changed a little bit. Carl Urban is definitely Bones. That yes, he perfect. Like there's nothing you can say, even Nick can say wrong about that character. Yes,
This is a
he,
publicity.
he did a good job. Uh, Actually, they all did a really great job. That's why the cast was great. The visuals was great. The effects were great. You know, J.J. Abrams likes his lens flares. Um, yeah, he in an interview later he said that he may have kind of overdone it. But yeah, he said he may have overdone it. Let's see. There was emotional storytelling. The opening scene is probably one of the most emotional opening scenes for me. Like since Up, because Up opening scene is very emotional. This scene was also very emotional. What was going on there? And it was respectful. It wasn't a replacement. Last night, and I'm sorry, I'm calling you out on this, Nick. Nick goes, you know, you're Whovian, right? You like Doctor Who. What if they did that to Doctor Who? Oh, they did. When they had Peter Cushing be a science teacher in high school, build a TARDIS or build a time machine, call it the TARDIS, and travel through time and fight the Daleks. It was like it's not the same thing because there's no Gallifrey, there's no Time Lords, like all of the lore doesn't exist. You stripped everything out that made it Doctor Who. This is not the same thing. This includes the lore of the original cast, I mean, the original crew, the original storytelling. It is just a different take on it. And I will yield the floor.
Thank you for your time and energy.
Not leaving anything off. Oh yeah, Spock.
Yep.
Leonard Nimoy being in there makes it worth it.
Yeah, yeah. And I do want to say it is funny to me when we bring up Carl Urban, because I think like I don't want to single anyone out, but she and I were like connecting on negativity right away. And she is like, I mean, that's not, you know, that's over here. Because what's funny for those of you less familiar with the movie is that Carl Urban is built like a truck. He's like a linebacker, and DeForest Kelly is a little fellow. And Carl Urban makes you, he's so good at acting that he convinces you he's 100 pounds lighter. I don't even know how you do that. But I will say, and I don't think this is going to come out as that negative, when you watch the movie, Carl Urban is the only one that looks like he studied the character and tried to emulate it instead of just doing his best own thing. And that meant a lot maybe to some of us who are like really wanting to connect with original characterization. So it was like, oh my gosh, he's doing a Bones thing here. He's like really channeling this character. And the others are, they're fine. I will say in the defense of Zachary Quinto that if you asked me to recast Leonard Nimoy or have someone do that, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure I can say he did anything wrong because I don't know what he could do differently. It's just very difficult to play. But Yeah. I know. Yeah. Me neither. Yeah.
Yeah.
So since Anthony jumped over to Doctor Who, let me cross that off before I forget. Because it is, those of you who don't know, Doctor Who, someone somewhere in Hollywood decided that the franchise was losing interest and losing momentum. And they said, I'm going to give this to a creative who's going to remarket it in a fun, exciting way and make it their own. And it won't be necessarily tied to that other stuff and things. But yeah, you know what is Doctor Who? I'm going to write down, you got Blue Box, got it. TARDIS, okay. He calls himself Doctor Who, Dalek, calls himself Doctor. And okay, it's pretty much it. I'm going to give people that and they'll be happy. And Anthony is right that Kelvin Trek goes out of its way to try and draw more direct connections and tie it into what was established before. I don't think it's nearly enough, but he's right that it is more connected than the one I was describing. My point is this sort of grab bag, light, casual perusal of what someone thinks a fandom is. So like J.J. Abrams is making a movie about something he's not as enthused about. And he's like, what do people like? I mean, just give me the gist. I don't have all day. And it's like, well, we like this ship called the Enterprise. And we're like, there were these outfits that were like almost primary colors. And you've got phasers instead of lasers. And I don't know, there's tribbles. I'll put a tribble in there. And it's like he sort of highlights. So he doesn't have a lot of time for all of them. And that was sort of part of my comparison. But yeah, there are differences as well. So here are some of the other things that Anthony was talking about that he kind of dug, and I tried to find some cool pictures and stuff. It's a very pretty bridge.
Yeah, the bridge is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like it. But yeah, no, it's good. You said
I know.
So this is, if you want to win the argument, you can just talk about him because he's
Anton
really,
Johnson.
yeah, he's really sweet. I did watch the first one again with my wife and kid. And to give you context, my kid's 15, so I'll watch something with him that I did not like previously and see it through his eyes. And he got me to appreciate Batman and Robin on a different level. So yeah, I'm horrified to tell you all that my wife and kid thought this was a blast. They had a great time. And him, when he comes on screen, Sulu, and it's like, I'm sorry, Chekhov, and he's like, and he's so personable. The actor did such a good job of being fun and interesting. Very little like Pavel Chekhov from the original series, but fun, and he's kind of cool and he's nice.
Not to help you with your case.
Oh yeah, sure.
The characterizations of some of the characters, yeah, they left a little bit to be desired because this Chekhov was not anything like the previous Chekhov.
Pavel, yeah.
Pavel, but what was the actor's name?
Oh,
Yes, William Coney. And Walter Coney. And
you're still fast.
he didn't really, right, he didn't really, a lot of the characters didn't really channel the original. Like, as much as I like Zoe Saldana, she was not, but I understand what they were doing, what she was doing with the character was very different than what Nichelle Nichols did. And she also had, I can't even say they gave her more to do because she seemed to fall into a very similar role that Nichelle Nichols did. Yeah.
As a Galaxy Quest reference, if there's the
younger versions of themselves. Same person I was 20 years ago. Like how, life experience, and especially if they've been on the Enterprise this much and they've gone through all of the stuff that they've gone through in different worlds, that will kind of change your perspective and your personality, your behavior as you get older. So it didn't bother me as much that they were a little bit younger. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that was one of the things they wanted to do. They were like, we're gonna start all of them earlier, where they don't have all that stuff you already know about.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for helping me with that.
But she was saying, she didn't smile, I don't think, once in those movies.
Yeah, and I was bothered that she was relegated to Spock's girlfriend. Yeah. Mhm. She's different. You would think that that would have been the characterization that they should have gone with for her character. Mhm.
Well,
She younger as more serious and then gotten a little more carefree as time gone on. Like, it's her first time on.
Yeah, she's like literally right out of the
but
academy.
wasn't
It's in the Prime Universe. Yeah. So that would lead her to be that kid. The one thing, and I'm sorry, Nick, one thing is what we learn, and I want to say this is in the novelization. I hate keep bringing it up, but there's a lot of, yeah. It takes it. They basically say that the fact this butterfly effect, the fact that the Narada came back, it changed the trajectory, and all the characters that we know and love, they're all different, just based on the fact that he came back. The bridge looks the way it does because of the scans that the Kelvin did. They got back to Starfleet and they were able to make changes in their technology. So the technology is more advanced than it was in the original series. Chekhov didn't come on the original series until later, but here, this was like his first thing right out of Starfleet, and we don't get that. So they, right, it was supposed to be a training mission for a lot of the first instance, their first time on the starship. So
yeah.
So it might sound.
It's the right place. Go on.
I'm Trekkie. The- And when he starts pointing out some of the negative stuff, I always say to him, well, go back and watch the original series. If that's all you wanted to see, it's more of the exact same. Right. I love Star Trek. I don't think I've seen anything I don't like because they're different stories. And I pose the question, would people like this as a movie if it had no connection to the Star Trek that we know? If you would still like this, and this is a South Park, say, let it go, just go back on Paramount Plus and watch the original series, because it can't tell the same stories the same way all the time, or we wouldn't go see it. But they also are bringing in newbies who never even heard of Star Trek before, and this is good for them.
thank you for your point.
And one thing you're talking about, this comes up with like people who are consistently toxic about Star Wars or something. And it bothers me just because, I mean, there are things that I do and don't like in all of the franchises, but it's like, if someone disavows everything that is not part of something previous, then they're not enjoying it, as you say. And it's like, well, go with the stuff you enjoy. You seem really unhappy.
Yeah.
But the other thing, to try and connect what you were saying to what someone else did, you have a choice when you recast, and you can tell people, and I think they did, and we can kind of tell, you can make it your own thing. So like young Han Solo, do we want him to try and be Harrison Ford? And I feel like he said no. He tried to be casual, but not emulate. Whereas Donald Glover was like channeling this Billy D. Williams thing. And both answers are present in that movie, the same way Carl Urban is. So yeah, I think I agree with what you're saying. And it's like, I think the resentment from the constructive people comes from wanting new, but more. And one of my points that I'll get to here is that the reason that some of us Star Trek fans are intractable and difficult and argumentative is because we were trained to be. Because Star Trek did this really weird thing in 1966. At the beginning of the first episode, at the end of the first episode, if you count Where No Man Has Gone Before as the first episode, they start going back in time, not for a clear reason. The odometer is spinning backwards. And they make this offhand comment like, according to these readings, I mean, we should be able to do this again later or something like that. It has nothing to do with the plot. But people watching, really? They also encounter an energy field at the edge of the galaxy. I mention it because 3 episodes later, someone is trying to take them out of the galaxy. And one of them says, we've been there. There's an energy field. And we're like, you remember that from 2 episodes ago? That's a real thing. Star Trek trained us to ask these science, engineering, technology questions. And they did it with many mistakes consistently over years, 40 years, 4 decades. We beat, in my opinion, Doctor Who in attempted consistency with additional things like, well, other stuff. We beat, what was the other big one? Lord of the Rings in terms of the amount of content that had been created. So Trekkies had 4 decades of continuity. So when these movies started, and I'll go ahead and when these movies started, J.J. Abrams got this job and he said, everybody told him, you're going to have all these issues from Trekkies who were like saying, well, you forgot this, you forgot that, you forgot that. And he said, I have a device. I've got a plan. First thing, first movie, we are going to, yeah, you said be mean. I'll be hyperbole. I'm going to decimate canon. I am going to deliberately fire photon torpedoes at cannon. I'm going to blow up cannon. So what happens is everything going forward, they can try and complain, but they can't touch me because I've destroyed the cannon. I can build my new cannon. And he did. He erroneously thought that Star Trek started with, you couldn't go back further than the birth of Kirk, right? Which is weird because he has Pike in there and stuff. But all of us there were like, I mean, wasn't Kirk born in Iowa? Yeah. Because of yes. Well, but that's the thing. But Anthony already told you, it's like, well, the Narada had these effects on things when it popped up. Did they say that they were racing back at the time of the incursion to try and get him delivered on planet Earth? Because it's just, but my point isn't to nitpick. It is to try and show a pattern of sort of casual disregard. And it was a device to try and get away from some of the nitpicking. And I will say, when I watched it, I was like, I think I saw it on the level you were supposed to. It was a fun little adventure. It was nice and it was pretty. So this is my first point, that the target audience is partly newbies, like Michelle, who is great, by the way, and did not deserve to be verbally assaulted by Nick. Former fans with sort of vague, happy memories, but kind of what you were saying, they are not about going home and watching TOS over and over again. They saw it maybe at some point, but it's like, you know, hey, show me something new, you know, let's move on. This is that thing, if any of you are not sure why we have remakes of Disney classics, because you watch the Disney classics. There are people who don't. They are not going to see Beauty and the Beast until they remake it. And they're like, oh, I remember that from a while back. I'll check that out. So I think this is part of the target audience. Show me something new, you know, that old Trek stuff. And the other thing, I already talked about sort of this aggressive dismantling of the canon, which felt violent. Like when something is snatched out of your hand, even if a person had a right to it, you're like,
you're wrong.
Well, I didn't.
But go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't interrupt you.
I didn't say it once when Anthony was like,
go ahead. Aggressive dismantling.
Aggressive.
What happened.
Oh my god! Well, a ship like flew through a black hole to blow up the cannon.
He didn't aggressively dismantle cannon.
Yeah.
Okay. Too much the Calvin. Love things they're great. Watch the new Tron Legacy. Loved it. Things it's great.
And he's willing to go back to see the original song and appreciate it for what it is. Same thing with Star Wars. He went back to watch some of the originals. I'm like, does it different? Does it bother you? They're both good. And that's the way I see it. I mean, sometimes I'll get a little upset.
Can you give me one example of that? Just one example off the top of your head. They changed something that, yeah. Okay. Well, and it's hard to replace Nichelle Nichols as well.
Yeah,
So
that's-
Saldana.
Not to belabor the point. Oh, yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, my wife was the same thing. She had no interest in the times that I've watched the original series. She's like, yeah, no, thank you. But afterwards, when Star Trek II was coming out, Into Dark.
The Wrath of Sequel. Yeah.
Yeah, the Wrath. She's like, oh, and she was curious as to this character. And so we went back and we watched Space Seed and Wrath of Khan. And she, oh, these are actually pretty good. So we were gonna watch all of them. And she's like, no, let's go to YouTube and find like the top 10 original series episodes. And I'll be willing to watch the top 10 original series episodes. So we did that. And she was like, oh, this is actually not bad. Whereas before, she was not interested. Yeah, a couple of years younger. I know but they're coming from the same place of they didn't want anything to do with original Star Trek.
The idea that it is a gateway drug to further Trek is a great point. And I will do that better because I told Anthony that I made some positives as well. And I think it's very similar where if they didn't make these movies, there is a very good chance that we would not have any of the new content that came afterward that is back on the previous timeline that I liked more. So like Lower Decks, if you haven't watched it, a lot of it is just adoration for what has come before. Some of it is like making fun of it, but it is just so rife with those references and things. So I might owe that to Kelvin movies because it was lying in an awkward place where they weren't sure what to do.
I mean, yeah, Charlotte Holmes.
Basil Rathbone.
Never understood. Saw Nick one, which I call the guy that finds me, it wasn't.
It goes to be.
Yeah.
And he.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
That
I had wanted to say that the new material, because Discovery was sort of a direct result of the increased new interest in Star Trek. And again, most Trekkie people didn't really care for Star Trek Discovery because it was so different. And it was not really canon. It was a ship that had a technology that we had never heard before or seen before. And based on when it's set, why don't we have it now? Because it is a prime timeline show. And here's the character. Spock had a sister or adopted sister that we didn't know about.
It's his second surprise sibling.
Yeah. So we get Discovery. And I will tell you, as a Trekkie, no, in the beginning, I didn't really care for it, but I watched it because I'm a Trek fan. And you know, what is it I always say? Pee on me and call it rain.
You're big about that.
So but it grew on me and I kind of liked it. But because of the backlash against it and all the criticisms, we got another show, which was a course correction, which was Strange New Worlds, which is supposed to be a callback to the original with cast members or characters that we know and love doing the things that we remembered from the original series, which is explore strange new worlds. That's why they called it that. Right.
Well,
and so
okay.
they were in that, and it was almost like it was a reaction. Okay, this is what you guys want here. We'll give it to you, and guess what? We'll throw Captain, Pike in it just for fun measure. And and Robert April, we got him in there too. We're just throwing them all in there.
Well, and another side of that is another compliment I have for the Kelvin movies is that they took the heat off of some of the new casting. So I'm not going to be as mad about new Jim Kirk because I already had new Jim Kirk and I got all the fussing out of my system. And then that you guys remember that
I didn't say it didn't have problems. I'm just saying that they would say
yeah, but the thing is that
it was a return back.
the media is looking to get us worked up and they'll be like, can you believe this? And I'm like, I'm not that worried. It's fine. Because you already broke the seal on it. The sacrilege, oh, it can't be done. I've moved past that. So now is that guy Spock? I mean, he started out with a beard, and y'all can't explain to me why the Star Trek like sideburn Spock has this tendril thing going. I don't know what that's about, but it's let me try and finish my side.
Oh, I'm sorry. I interrupted you again.
So tonal shift. I feel like originally Star Trek had a big emphasis on the arts, the engineering and sciences, and the Kelvin movies are largely focused on action set pieces and really cool visuals. And that's another backhanded compliment because they are really cool visuals. Kirk rides a dirt bike. If they try to pitch that scene, that was the pitch. They're like, he rides a dirt bike. And the producer was like, can he beam out while on the dirt bike? It's like, yeah. But it doesn't matter that. Don't get tangled up in why. But here you can see, like actual astronauts. And Mae Jemison is like one of my hero people. I'm telling my kid when he's in grade school, you got to do a report on somebody, do Mae Jemison. She's amazing. So there is a change in focus. This is another one. And my brother calls the Kelvin Trek movies parody. And I call them more of a tribute band because it's like, if you want to see the Beatles, but you're not going to see the Beatles, but your friend is going to go see a Beatles tribute band. And you're like, these guys are pretty good, and stuff. But if you can still go back and watch the Beatles, it's like you might have an attitude about it or something. But the other thing, we did a ranking of starship captains across genres, across fandoms previously. And one thing I noticed keep coming up. I mean, I was biased towards Star Trek stuff. You know who did surprisingly well? Pigs in Space. Well, no, and there's a reason, and it's not just because we love Muppets, and Muppets score well in different contests, but it's because people really wanted more Star Trek content, and the Orville is a good example of that. And Seth MacFarlane knew something before he started. He's like, how can I make my own Star Trek show? So if you watch it, season 1 is much more he's pitching it to producers as a comedy. It's a trick. Mm-hmm. And most of us who watched the first few episodes could tell right away that it's like, he's like really easing this into a serious show as quick as he can. And it's, so now I don't watch the Orville, but it's what you said. I'm going back and just rewatching TOS and TNG. And it makes me happy and I don't whine, let people enjoy things. But it's, you can tell by the way people talk about it. They're loving Star Trek content. And you can see, I don't know if you guys have watched Black Mirror. Yes. Yeah. I just can't watch things with Jesse Plemons, but I mean, good for them. It's primary colors. Oh my gosh. Okay, running out of time. Mischaracterizing Captain Kirk, and this came up in the ratings as well. We do something in our culture where for fun, we have for years pretended that this man is a different person. We created a fake Captain Kirk that's not real Captain Kirk. He is a womanizing playboy, flying into port, hooking up with whatever green girls around. And he doesn't care about the rules. He doesn't care about the prime directive. He does what he wants. And you can see drunk Pine Kirk down here, bottom right. And what's happened is, there's this quiet pocket of spoil sports and grouches who are like, well, actually, Kirk was like a studious kid and valedictorian, and he knew the ship inside and out. And every girl that he hooked up with, he was either trying to manipulate to get out of the prison cell, or he was like deeply in love with and wanted to spend the rest of life with, and she blew up. But it's like, but that's not fun. Nobody wants to have that conversation. So when they make this show, the Kirk that they made was a lot closer to characterization Kirk. And when they're saying, again, I don't have time. JJ is not going to rewatch the whole original series. He's like, give me the highlights. Give me the highlights. It's like, well, he cheated on the Kobayashi Maru. What else? Well, I mean, you know, he's like, there's a scene where he's like sassy and eating an apple. He's like, I'm gonna have him cheating on the Kobayashi Maru, sassy eating an apple. And he is like,
Nick, no, I'm not gonna.
well, that's how you
No,
gotta,
no,
but it's
no, you can't do that because one, it is a younger captain, is a young James Kirk, like someone said before. He has not, the Kirk that you remember from the original series is a Kirk that has already established and has a history of
it's a
stuff.
great point. This is why you're
And
wrong.
this Kirk,
So
I'm not wrong.
no,
I'm
because
not.
the Kirk in the original series is established in the original series as being a certain way before the original series. And this is that thing JJ didn't know when he rewrote Time, is he was saying, I know when the story starts, but the truth is, and Riley talks about this quite a bit, and a couple of other people, where Kirk is what people think Picard was. While Picard was getting in fights in school, Kirk was boring and studying in his room. But in this, he is, I mean, he's driving the car off the cliff and he's dangerous and he doesn't care about the rules and stuff. So it appealed.
But this Kirk didn't have his father.
Yeah.
The Kirk in the show
I'm
had
glad
his
you brought up
father.
his father, Anthony.
Oh my God. All right, go ahead.
Because his father was
think we're out of
never
time,
in
Nick.
Starfleet, and his brother was. His brother has vanished, probably because he couldn't be born. I think was he older? I don't know about Sam.
He was
He was older, so he would already have been alive before the Narada showed up. But the Narada showing up made Kirk be born away from Iowa and made his father suddenly be in Starfleet. So there has to be another event. But thank you. That's a good point. Those are the Kirk differences. And that's the meat of my argument. I have other positives. I have positives to say as well that I haven't brought up yet. But yeah, what did you say?
Like 6 in Star Trek. I'm on my grade. It was fine, and I'm like 8. But he also appreciated it's a different timeline, so you can have different with the characters. So kind of like I'm a history nerd, so when I went to Bridgerton, I have to read the
And this is one of my other compliments, okay? Because it's at the time it came out, there was reason to believe there would be no other timeline, and that you better like it because this was the future of Star Trek. And that criticism has largely been defeated, and those emotions are coming down. Chris Pine's a pretty decent fellow, and he's fun. Well, I had a picture here of Jason Nesbitt, and Galaxy Quest was fun, and it was the caricature, but I mean, some of that can do it. Yeah, it was fun. Yeah. There's good stuff.
Biggest criticism, as we all heard, oh, it's not from Georgia, we're all in Georgia. Okay, Bones from Kentucky in that universe. That's ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, well.
Later.
One of the other things Anthony mentioned, old Spock and Leonard Nimoy can do no wrong.
I didn't say that.
I said that.
Oh.
You mentioned old Spock. I mean, he shows up and it's like, you'll see, for me, Shatner will show up in something like Airplane 2, and the man he says some hilariously awesome things. But it's like, the other thing I think is at the end of Beyond, where they have this photo show up, and they didn't have to do that, but it's like, okay, that's nice. And you guys are trying to reach out with an olive branch. So these are how the movies did. They did well. They all did well. Yeah, and the audience scores and stuff. This is Rotten Tomatoes, but they're pretty solid across the board.
Yeah.
Well, okay, and we did run out of time before Anthony got to say his problems with the reboot of The Wrath of Khan, but I can say it's just no, but it's like The Wrath of Khan, and I mean he's showing the previous episodes to Michelle, and you're very right that it is. Let's introduce it to a new audience and stuff, but it has just on a very surface level. The Wrath of Khan, the premise is that this is a follow-up to an episode of a show from decades before. And the new movie try to capture that really fast and fun and cool by just introducing a character that had no weight. And a lot of the movies are like that for me, where I'm not trying to be mean with this. You can still enjoy them, but they're not, the depth is like ankle deep. It's like, well, don't worry about John Harrison or something. The other flaws that are things like Into Darkness, Wrath of Khan reboot is like, they invent the go anywhere transporter, which kind of invalidates needing starships that much because you can just beam to Kronos anytime you want. They introduce immortality blood. Go anywhere and live forever are both established in Into Darkness, but we're not going to talk about that anymore. And the introspective thing that we learned from previous Trek, it's kind of like questions. I want to thank you all for your time. This has been mostly respectful. You guys were all great. I was iffy.
Please make sure you rate us in the app.
If you didn't like my attitude, rate it positively for Anthony. He puts up with a lot.
Both of you.
Yes.
And also remember, go to YouTube, look for Fandom Hybrid Podcast, and get us to 500 subs.
Oh, they do an episode about Deep Space Nine. That is a really good episode.
The Fandom Hybrid Podcast. Oh, and Blurty.
Drunken Blurty podcast. We're doing a panel tomorrow on Star Trek captains. Please come out and share opinions, or just yell at us your opinion now because you're not going to be here tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we're doing time travel at 10 in the morning.
10 in the morning, time travel. We're going to talk about time travel. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll take that.
It is.
Only thing that I really hated about Into Darkness